watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Welcome back into Fox 35 News Plus. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Thursday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. The criminal investigation into the Hope Florida Foundation has entered a new phase, with the grand jury proceedings underway at the Leon County Courthouse this week. Joining us live now via Zoom, we've got Alexandra Glorioso, state government reporter with the Miami Herald, and Lawrence Maurer, Tallahassee correspondent for the Tampa Bay Times. They have been at the forefront of reporting on this story for months now, and we appreciate you all joining us this afternoon here on Fox 35 News Plus.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to be here.
I know the past couple of days y'all have been staking out the Leon County Courthouse. Nice to see you getting a little bit of a break from that. But just talk to us a little bit about what you have seen and who you have seen at the courthouse as the grand jury meets.
Well, we reported, I think it was last week now, that the grand jury was going to convene on this matter. And, you know, at that point, it's still a little bit of a question mark. What are they meeting on? Because while the state prosecutor in Leon County has confirmed a criminal investigation, the office never confirmed the grand jury or what the subject of the investigation was. I mean, connecting the dots, it seemed as though it was related to the Hope Florida saga that we've been covering all year, and how $10 million walked from a Medicaid settlement to a state-created charity spearheaded by the First Lady and supported by Governor Ron DeSantis, and into a political committee intent on defeating the recreational marijuana amendment on last year's ballot. But you still, as reporters, don't know for sure. So we decided to stake out the grand jury this week. We had come Monday to the courthouse to find that, nobody was there, which is what we thought based on our reporting. But then Tuesday, they really started with their proceedings. And the very first day, we saw Amy Ronshausen, who was the executive director of one of the nonprofits that applied for a $5 million grant to the foundation, and then quickly turned around and donated close to the same amount of money to Keep Florida Clean, a political action committee helmed by, then Governor Ron DeSantis' Chief of Staff, James Uthmeier. So it's pretty interesting that, Ronshausen was called in. She didn't answer our questions on what she was at the courthouse for, but we saw her go in on Tuesday morning around 9 o'clock and leave more than 2 hours later. She had an attorney. He, acknowledged that he was her attorney to us. So it seems as though she was likely there to testify on that financial transaction. And then you want to take it?
Sure. Yeah. We also saw Representative Alex Andrade. He, of course, is the Republican lawmaker who has been investigating this whole Hope Florida Foundation saga and the path of this $10 million in Medicaid money. He was there. He said he testified to the grand jury for about 2 hours. We also saw at the courthouse yesterday Joshua Hay, who until very recently was the president of the Hope Florida Foundation. And he was, of course, on the board that approved accepting the $10 million and giving away the $10 million. And so it's pretty clear that the grand jury seems to be looking at the path of this money, which is exactly what, Representative Alex Andrade has said was illegal.
You've also tried to speak with the state attorney about this. What have they said?
Really, not much of anything. They won't even confirm that what the grand jury is looking at or what it's convening for. It was obvious that, the state attorney, Jack Campbell, it's obvious that he was there for the grand jury because we saw him going out of a room marked grand jury proceedings. He's obviously seems to be overseeing this process, but he won't say what this is really about. A couple months ago, his office did confirm, though, that they had an active criminal investigation going on related to the Hope Florida Foundation.
One of the difficulties I would imagine in your reporting on this story at this stage is that grand jury proceedings are, generally secret, and there isn't really much that comes out of things like this typically.
Yeah, we've really had to like man every public exit of the courthouse, of which there are several, in fact. I mean, two main ones, but then there are a few employee exits, and we could get close to one of them because it was a garage. So we had to do a lot of sleuthing to figure out how people were getting into the building and out of it. And many people were able to dodge us. We have ideas about who else testified, but we didn't actually physically see them. And so many people were able to dodge us. And, we basically caught people when they made a mistake and walked in front of us.
Yeah, and the grand jury could result in two things. Obviously it could lead to an indictment of someone, or it could it could not indict someone. And we whatever's said at these proceedings, we don't know, and likely we'll never know. We'll just find out the result at some point, which could
Has the
take weeks.
Yeah. Has the Attorney General answered any questions recently about this and where things kind of stand from his perspective?
No, he hasn't. In fact, everyone's been pretty quiet about it, including the secretary for the Department of Children and Families, who was the person who was the secretary at the time. We saw her in an event yesterday and asked her, "Hey, did you get a grand jury subpoena?" She wouldn't even look at us. She literally ran away from us. And so everyone seems to be very, very hush hush in the DeSantis administration about this at the moment.
And she's significant because it's the Department of Children and Families that was effectively overseeing the financial transactions of the Hope Florida Foundation, which is a state created charity that was put into law to support the Department of Children and Families mission, which in this case was the Hope Florida program, which is intended to get Floridians off of government aid.
So, do we know what a timeline might be for whatever might come from this grand jury proceedings?
No idea. I mean, it could take days, could take weeks. We really don't know. We've not been told what their schedule is or if they're going to come back. We don't know. So it could be any length of time. They could ask more witnesses to come. That's certainly within their purview. It's we just really don't know.
I'm curious too with the upcoming legislative session, if you're hearing any from state lawmakers about this, if this is going to be on their radar. We know there was a probe that started last session, but I'm curious if you're hearing anything from lawmakers about steps or guardrails when it comes to kind of legislative action about Hope Florida.
Well, last legislative session, they took action in the sense that they had no action because the governor had asked the legislature to enshrine the Hope Florida program into law. And after our reporting, lawmakers declined to do that. So I guess the governor could come up with a bill again. The governor doesn't sponsor the bill, but he finds an ally in the legislature to sponsor the bill. I guess he could try to do that again, but his administration has been very quiet about the Hope Florida program. His agencies have not asked for new money to expand the program. And this was a program that he wanted to put into law to have in place in the governor's office and to have all related agencies answer directly to it. So it would have been like overseeing a lot of the healthcare programs and other programs in state government. They had big, expansive plans for the Hope Florida program, and that has largely gone quiet. It's not clear whether it's gone quiet just for now or if it's really gone quiet. But it's my understanding that the House is unlikely to keep probing Hope Florida this upcoming legislative session. That I think, everyone in the process is trying to respect now what is a criminal investigation and what the grand jury has going on. But there will be a question as to whether, say someone in the administration gets indicted, what will the legislature do? Because the legislature does have the power to impeach if an elected official is, found to have done a crime.
So a lot still to watch in this case. Lawrence Maurer and Alexandra Glorioso with the Tampa Bay Times, the Miami Herald. Really appreciate you joining us and talking with us about your reporting. Y'all have been on top of this story from the very beginning, and we appreciate you sharing that reporting with us this afternoon.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yep,
It's a pleasure.
thanks, Garrett.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after this.
You're watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Welcome back into Fox 35 News Plus. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Thursday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. Want to let you know we are standing by for a news conference coming up in about 15 minutes from now in Manatee County. Give me 2 seconds here, and I'm going to show you this tweet from the state CFO. It's Blazin Golia who's going to be in Manatee County talking more about wasteful and excessive spending. And you see his tweet here, his post on X, saying another FAFO audit at 1:30 p.m. Deep red county wasteful and excessive spending numbers coming soon. So we have seen him travel across the state to a number of different localities and see him as he kind of talks through some of the findings, the results of what they have found, looking at the budgets, the spending of local governments, and they've been to several of them throughout the area, throughout our area here in Central Florida, throughout other parts of the state as well. Orange County, City of Jacksonville, Hillsborough County, Alachua County, Broward County, most recently in Seminole County, where he said he discovered about $48 million in what they believe to be excessive spending. And then when you account for a recently passed tax increase, he said that number goes up to about $77 million. So going to be interesting to see what comes from this. You see, as you saw in his post on social media, calling it Deep Red County, and he has said that they have found this, what they believe to be wasteful and excessive spending, not just in Democrat-led counties, but also in Republican-led counties. And so we will stay tuned for that news conference, which is scheduled for 1:30, and we will bring that to you live when it does begin right here on Fox 35 News Plus. Looking a little bit closer to home, and there is a race for a commission seat, the District 5 commission race. So we're watching closely because it pits Regina Hill, who was previously removed from that seat, as well as a candidate who is challenging her, Lawana Gelzer. and the current occupant of that seat as well, Shan Rose, who took Hill's spot after she faced charges in connection with the exploitation of an elderly woman. She's accused of using more than $100,000 of that woman's life savings. Hill is on personal luxuries and a home. She has denied those accusations, currently dealing with the criminal side of things in court right now, but running for a re-election in this seat. And last night there was a debate between Regina Hill and Lawana Gelzer. They had a debate at the John H. Jackson Center in Paramore. And here's a little bit of that in their conversation, some of their exchanges as well at that debate last night.
Commissioner Regina Hill, of course, I've been able, with your assistance, to create over 8,500 affordable homes, many of them that you're living in. Also, some single-family homes. Some got the first home, and it's somewhat sad this evening that she lives 3 minutes away down the sidewalk. Wow. And bypass this building and you, the people, to go over to Metro West to have coffee time with folks that she said on her mailer yesterday that understand the struggles of District 5. What has been put on pause for 16 months. Someone that has a heart for this community, someone that can lead this community and understand all of the future contracts to make sure that those that are in our community, that almost $3 billion is getting ready to be generated here, that there's opportunity and access for all. What is evident this evening, there's no king in District 5. The people matter and speak. And so I implore you all to say thank you very much, Interim Commissioner Rose, but your services are no longer needed. So I come out and say, the work must continue. I made promises and I kept them. And now it's time to take back what they stole from Caesar. And that is the voice of the people. Elect me, Regina Hill. I'm glad to be here. Standing up for the people and fighting for the people. Good evening. My name is Lawana Gelzer, and I'm the candidate for Orlando City Commissioner, District 5. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out this evening. I want to thank the organizers, but I want to especially thank those who could not make it that are listening. Well, I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, because Lawana Gelzer don't throw a rock and hide her hand. So the reason why we're having this and had to have this is March 27th, our governor, Regina Hill, was indicted on 7 felony charges. On April 1st, 2024, Governor DeSantis removed her from office, suspended her. I want to emphasize on the executive order, just like things were passed out, I have the executive order, but the key factor that I'm concerned about is the privilege of a public officer during her suspension, and has that been in compliance? Count 1, exploitation of the elderly person or disabled person. Count 2, exploitation of the elderly or the disabled person. Count 3, exploitation of the elderly or the disabled Does
She's about doing her research and bringing the information to the citizens. I fight, and I'm not afraid of a fight. I believe in serving because I've been doing it all along. And I'm running because you have had one commissioner for over 10 years. You've had another commissioner who did not decide to come. But Gelsa has never stopped working for the community because I believe in the community. So clearly, if the work needs to continue,
when people talk about District 5, they like to talk about investment and development. So the question that I have, first question is, how will you ensure that these new development plans in District 5 protect long-standing residents from being displaced and allow former residents to be able to return and build in the district? How do you make sure that development is for us? That's the question.
Thank you, Sheena, for that answer. It isn't how, it's how we'll continue to. Because I have always made sure that when there's contracts being made, that there was a community component attached to it. Whether there was development, and also here in the Paramore area downtown, where much of the development is happening, there is a component in this new plan from the West Courts all the way to the Campbell Royal Stadium, where there has to be a certain percentage of investment. Now, and there is a community plan where local businesses, those here in the Paramore area that resided here and had businesses, that they will also be a priority. There's also up to $350,000 that has been put into the CRA for small business development to build out. And if you are a minority, you get an additional 40%. There are some folks that have resided in Paramore, those that can reside there, city workers and safety workers.
What is your answer to the homeless problem in this neck of the woods, knowing that at one point there was an ordinance in place that they could not put homeless shelters in District 5? That has changed. So what are your thoughts about how to deal with homelessness?
okay, first of all, the ordinance that you're talking about keeps being rescinded when it's putting additional beds in the Paramore community. So the ordinance hasn't went away. It's just every time they want to put additional beds in the Paramore community, they rescind it, then they put it back on the books. I just want to make that perfectly clear because the late Ms. Woodley and several other people fought dearly and hard for that particular ordinance. As far as what I am saying over and over again, living within 4 homeless shelters in the Paramore community, I see it up front. So I'm speaking for what I'm dealing with. We've made solutions and suggestions on housing first. We've made it over and over again. But the type of shelters that keep being placed in the Paramore community is not the right type of shelters. And it's not benefiting anybody but the ones who are receiving the money. I've watched the Christian Service Center, the Salvation Army and others in December 2023 get over $25 million without even responding to an RFP. That's a request for proposal. That means you're going to tell me what you're going to do with the money. That is not happening. And in this August, when I went before the city council, I brought up that their performance is a D to failed policies. It's not working.
You want to continue on city land to build more mixed income homes. I don't believe in just all low income homes. You want to make it mixed income. The other major component to me is soon as I get back to City Hall, I want to make sure that we put some type of local small business opportunity program together that mimics what Orange County is doing.
There's currently an ordinance in place where a bar and restaurant owners downtown, which is really your district, you guys really have all of that in your district. They're not allowed to, open a new business 100 feet from an existing business. Tell us what your thoughts are as you continue to support this ordinance and the restrictions that the city has put in place on bars and restaurants.
Absolutely, I do not. Even though Luana is not one who drinks alcohol and frequent bars, I believe that the most important thing is
a heated debate in a lot of ways. That District 5 debate last night held in Paramore as the commission race kind of heats up between Shan Rose, who is the current holder of that seat and was not there, and then Regina Hill, who is facing charges, and you heard her challenger, Lawana Gelser, discussing that and getting some boos as well. We're going to take a quick break here on Fox 35 News Plus, but we'll be right back after this.
You're watching Fox 35 News Plus, streaming on Fox Local.
Welcome back into Fox 35 News Plus. Garrett Weimer here, and thanks for joining us on this Thursday afternoon. I want to get you inside this news conference in Manatee County. You see Blaise Ngolia, the state CFO, being introduced right now, getting ready to speak, talking about government accountability, wasteful spending, excessive spending at the local level, and he teased on social media just a little bit ago, saying that they found some wasteful and excessive spending that they're getting ready to share some of those numbers, even in a deep red county, as he called it. So let's go ahead and listen in to this introduction as we get ready to hear from the state CFO speaking in Manatee County with the latest on his what he calls the FAFO audits, fool around and find out, as he's been going around and seeing really looking at the projections, what they expect the budget and the spending to be based on population growth, a number of other factors, including inflation. And so they have been looking at this and finding upwards of $1 billion at this point in those, 6 previous local governments that they have looked at and done these kind of analyses on. So let's go ahead and listen in live in Manatee County.
Additional effort on, despite the many other things that a CFO has to do. I mean, he's the state fire marshal. That's why they call him Blaise. He runs DFS. He takes care of all of our property and assets in the state of Florida. And at the same time, he's making sure governments, as well as the state government, remain fiscally accountable and transparent. So it's with great pleasure that I call my good friend and paisan, Blaise Ngolia, to the stage. Thank you, President.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. It is an honor to be here today. Unfortunately, on not so great circumstances, that we do have to highlight another county that we have seen has excessively spent your tax dollars. Wastefully, I would add also. President, thank you for that introduction. It has been an honor to work with you and alongside of you for our time in the legislature. I am humbled and I am honored to be with you today. So thank you, President. My name is Chief Financial Officer Blaise Ngolia. Well, that's not my name. My name is Blaise Ngolia. I'm the Chief Financial Officer. Since entering this to highlight excessive spending of local governments in an effort to lay the predicate that people that we are going to have to tackle here in droves. It is incumbent on us to do everything that we can to keep government in check and hold them accountable and make sure that they are using our tax dollars wisely. So as we have been going around county to county, city to city, making the case that government is excessively and wastefully spending your tax dollars, we have found a bunch already. Here is some of the information that we have found in 6 counties. $190 million of excessive, wasteful spending in Orange County. $199 million in excessive and wasteful spending in the city of Jacksonville. $278 million of excessive, wasteful spending in Hillsborough County. $84 million in Alachua County. $189 million in Broward County, and $48 million in excessive wasteful spending in Seminole County. In just these 6 local governments alone, we have uncovered almost $1 billion in wasteful, excessive spending in just the 24-25 fiscal year budget. That is 1 year every year. Now, the media has been getting it wrong. They have been saying it has been $1 billion over the last 5 years. $278 million in Hillsborough County, they say, well, that's over 5 years. No, that's 1 year. That is last year. To help put that in context, that is $1 billion that belong in the hands of you, the taxpayers, and not in the hands of government. That is $1 billion of property tax cuts they could have given you this year, and could have easily done that, in our opinion, with 0 cuts to services. Now, before we start talking about cuts to services, because local governments are going to come out and they're going to say anything that they possibly can in order to try to keep their large, bloated budgets. I'm going to say this now, and I will say this forever. The first rule of government is to protect its citizens. In order to do that, the very first thing that they should be budgeting for is our first responders, fire and police. So when you hear anyone at local government saying that they're going to have to lay off our first responders, tell them, nope, we know the numbers, we know the real deal. Stop with the political games, stop with the spin. Our first responders, our fire and police should always be prioritized when it comes to spending. And they're going to continue listing a parade of horribles out there. We have predicted when we did the very first one about a month and a half ago, that local governments were going to come out, they were going to try to refute our numbers. They were going to try to throw out their own numbers to confuse you guys. They were going to be on TV trying to say that we're off base. They're going to go on TV saying that they need to keep every dollar of their bloated budgets because of some reason. And their friends in the media and their Sunday editorials are doing exactly what we said that they were going to do. They're going out and they're calling out us, saying that our information is wrong. They're going out and saying that government, they're going to have to cut services. Don't believe anything that they say, and hopefully I'm going to show you here today why what they're saying is not accurate. They're going to say You're going to have long wait times when you call 911. We're going to have to lay off fire, police, and they're going to have to eliminate government services. They're going to try to refute our numbers, which they can't. They're going to have their big government apologists continue to go out and try to pen those Sunday editorials claiming that the increases in their budgets is well spent. They're going to say it is because inflation and population has grown. Now, I want everyone to look right here. This started about a week after we presented the first numbers. We had predicted this, and right on cue, the media delivered. This was in the Tampa Bay Times. The increases in their budgets, they were excusing by saying the increases are largely attributable to inflation and rising population, not government graft, local leaders say. Well, of course they're going to say that. But we are here to call BS. Now, before we start unveiling numbers, here's a little about our methodology and how we arrive at these numbers, and why you can see that, why we can say that safely, that local governments are not being truthful with you when they say they need all of this money. This is how we did this. We started off with a baseline budget. The baseline budget we use for our calculations is the 2019-2020 fiscal year budget. That's the first budget that happened before COVID hit. That's our base budget. That is the budget before we had an explosion in government funding, whether it's come from COVID money coming down for the federal government or real estate taxes, 2019, 2018. And then what we did is we indexed it every year for inflation and population. We indexed it. We took the base budget, indexed it forward for 5 years, accounting for inflation and population growth. That means we came up with the number of where the budget should have reasonably been if you accounted for all the inflation and population. That means we included extra money to add for fire and police, for law enforcement, for general government employees. We included the extra cost that they would have to spend on things because of inflation. We have accounted for the normal growth of government in our numbers. We've accounted for everything that a local government should or would need in order to deliver services to the taxpayers. And I'm sorry to say that Manatee County blew right past that number. Blew right past that number. Now, on a percentage basis, Manatee County is probably the worst that we've come across so far, and the amount of the percentage over and above inflation and population. I also want to highlight also that I am here in Manatee County, which is a deep red county. Republicans out-registered Democrats 2-to-1 in this county. I have said, and I will continue to say, that wasteful excessive spending knows no partisan bounds. I, as the CFO of the great state of Florida, I'm going to call out wasteful spending, whether it is a Republican county or a Democrat county, because that is the only way you guys are going to know if I am being truthful with you. And I'm going to tell you right now, the big government apologists who are out there hitting the airwaves and writing the editorials, they are not being truthful with you. In fact, their rhetoric is saying that we're only doing this exercise in blue counties. That is absolutely not true. We've already done Hillsborough County. Hillsborough County is a red county, and they have more Republicans on their county commission than Democrats. We did Seminole County, same thing, and now we're in deep red Manatee County. So we've crunched the numbers. Once we took the budget, brought it forward, indexed for inflation and population to find out what Manatee County's general fund budget should be reasonably at this time, they blew past that number by $112 million. Manatee County does not have a huge budget. Put this in context. City of Jacksonville, it's the largest in the state. They were $199 million. Hillsborough County, $276. You had $200 million in Broward County, but just in Manatee County alone, $112 $1,468,805 of what we are terming as excessive and wasteful spending. This is the amount that they have exceeded what should be their budget reasonably when indexing for inflation and population growth. So what does this mean? How do we put it all in context? We'll do it today. Just like all other local governments that we've done this, we're going to try to break it down just so everyone understands just how bad the situation is. Since 2019, the Manatee County General Fund budget has increased by $279 million in just 5 years. In just 5 years, the local general fund budget, now there's two portions of your budget. There is the total budget, which is also going up. We're not concerned, we are concerned with overspending there, but for our numbers, we are just using the general fund budget. This is the portion of your budget that is funded by your property tax dollars, okay? Just the general fund budget in just 5 years has increased $269 million. That is an increase in their budget in just 5 years of 69%. The largest we have seen so far as we're doing these calculations. That is a huge increase. Now, your Manatee County has grown 61,545 people roughly over the last 5 years also. Now, this number is larger than some of the other counties and cities that we have come across. There has been more people moving into this county than a lot of the other counties and cities. Now, your local government is going to say, that's why we needed all that extra money. We've already accounted for it in our calculations. We've already accounted for the increase in population and inflation. That's a pretty big increase. But what is even bigger is the amount that the budget went up. And we're going to show you just exactly what we mean. When you take that budget increase and divide it by the amount of people that moved in, that means for every new person that moves into Manatee County, the general fund budget, your local government has been spending $4,300 per person. That's moving into Manatee County, they are spending over $17,000 per person. Just think about this. If you're a family of four, purchase a brand new home in a new subdivision in Manatee County, and let's say you're paying $6,000 in property taxes, your local government is spending and expanding to the tune of $17,000 just to deliver services for the increases in population. That math does not math. The argument can be made, it should be made, and it should be done, as when population increases, the cost per person should be going down, not up. Private sector does it. Private sector looks for efficiencies, they look for technology, they look for everything that it possibly can do to deliver a better outcome and better services at a lower unit cost. Unfortunately, government doesn't do the same. So on top of that, for that increase in those 61,000 people, local government has added 472 new employees just to accommodate for 61,000 people. That doesn't add up. 472 employees are what we see in some cities alone. Nevertheless, not to take care of 61,000 people. This is why the budget has gotten away from them. Now, 472 people. What is your local government going to say? I'm going to predict what they're going to say. They're going to say that it's a lot of fire and it's a lot of police. It is. a lot of fire and a lot of police. Because every time a government grows, every time a population grows, they have to meet certain metrics. If you have X amount of people moving into an area, you're going to need that much more police. If X amount of people move into the area, you're going to need that much more fire. But not 472. This means that they're growing government. They're hiring librarians, administrators, clerks, and expanding government at a rate that is probably unprecedented in this area. So to recap, according to our calculations, Manatee County current budget should be $112 million less than what it is right now. And again, to be clear, is inflation and population growth. Now, before we go any further, before I forget, this is for the press in the back. Once this is over, you're going to get your information, you're going to walk over and you're going to start talking to your local elected officials. Your elected officials are going to, because we have seen this in every 6 counties. All the 6 counties, you guys are going to go talk to your local elected officials. The elected officials are going to get behind the microphone and say, of course it went up. We had inflation and population. And that's all the media has ever asked. What I'm asking you guys is ask the follow-up question. Well, CFO Ngoli, according to the calculations that numbers have been crunched by CPAs in his office, said they've already accounted for inflation and population. What do you say then? I really want to hear that answer. So if we can do that. So if that $112 million was not spent, what would the effect be on everyday people who live here in your county? What it means is that your millage rate could have been reduced by 0.019 mils. And in our estimation, still delivered the essential services and not missed a beat. How can we safely say this? Because if property values have not gone up over the past 5 years, and property values have not gone up over the past 5 years, the budget would have realistically been $112 million less. They took the extra money, they spent it. They should be giving it back to you. So what does that mean for people in this county? What it means with that tax cut that in my belief they should have been giving back to you guys, if you had a home that had a taxable value of $400,000, you would have been saving $436 a year in property taxes just on the general fund budget. That's not even including the school board. Just don't get me started on school board wasteful spending. That would be just for that. If you had a property that was assessed at $500,000, you've been saving $545 a year. This is real money that should be put back in the hands of the people who earned it and funded the government. If you have a property that is worth $600,000 in assessed value, you would have saved about $655 a year. Again, real money back in the hands of the people who are paying and funding this excess. Now, the grand total of excessive and wasteful spending that we have now identified over 7 counties is $1.1 billion. That is not $1.1 billion cumulative total over 5 years. That is $1.1 billion in excessive and wasteful spending in year 24-25. That's not cumulative. That is now, right now. So, governments, according to our calculations, and you know what? It's not just according to our calculations. By a show of hands here, how many of you have seen their property tax bills and see property taxes starting to go sky high and you're starting to get concerned? That's what I thought. It's not just our calculations. It's the taxpayers who feel it. And what are they feeling is that local governments are wasting their hard-earned tax dollars left and right. Then they cry poor and they continue to want more and more. They try to put tax referendums on the ballot. They try to put tax increases in front of the county commission, and the people have had enough. Your property taxes have been going up not because of essential services, but because of excessive wasteful spending by career politicians and bureaucrats who think that you are an endless ATM for them. As your CFO, I will not stand idly by whether you are a Democrat or a Republican while Florida families are being taxed to the hilt and being taxed out of their homes. It is always good to remind government that it is not their money, it is our money. Local governments are expanding because they can, not because they need to. And local governments, unfortunately, are absolutely tone deaf to what is going on. They need to listen more to the people on Main Street than the people who are walking the halls of local government. They need to stop listening to bureaucrats, and they need to start listening to you. They need to listen to the grocery store clerk and stop listening to the city manager making $250,000 and $300,000 a year. Affordable housing is also a big issue in the state of Florida. Many local officials will get up during campaign time, they'll get up during their county commission or their city commission, they'll get in front of the TV and they'll say that we need more affordable housing. It is a #1 issue that needs to be solved, and I wholeheartedly agree with them. But yet when we tell them exactly how to make housing more affordable for their constituents, which means cutting property taxes, they aren't interested. Well, I wonder why. Local governments cannot complain about the lack of affordable housing at the same time they're creating the affordable housing crisis. They can cut their bloated budgets and deliver property tax relief. They are choosing not to. Remember that. They're choosing not to give the money back to you. They want to keep it themselves. Every dollar that a young couple starting a family saves on property taxes matter. Every dollar that a retired couple on Social Security saves on property taxes matter. Every dollar that a single mom working 2 jobs saves on property taxes matter. Every day, people in the private sector learn to do without. It's time governments do the same. Floridians have made it clear that they want property tax relief. Floridians have made it clear that they are tired of the wasteful, excessive, bloated budgets of local governments and continuing to come back to the taxpayers asking for more, more, more. And the governor and I have also been very clear that we are looking to offer real, true property tax reform on the November 2026 ballot with the eye of hopefully and possibly eliminating property taxes on homesteaded properties altogether. One last visual for you guys. To put it in visual context and wrap up what we just did, there's Manatee County's general fund budget. You can see we start off in the blue, and where the blue ends is where we should be. That's where Manatee budget actually is. That is 100 excessive spending that belongs in your bank accounts, not the bank accounts of government. At this time, it is my honor to bring up our speakers. Jeff Kottkamp is the Executive Vice President and General Counsel of Florida Tax Watch. He's also the incoming CEO of Tax Watch. Everybody give a big round of applause.
State CFO Blaise Ngolea speaking live right now in Manatee County, where he says he found one of the worst percentages from their FAFO audits that they've been conducting across the state, $112 million in what they believe to be wasteful and excessive spending in the budget there. And he says would allow them to reduce the millage rate there easily by more than 1 mil. So these news conferences continuing across the state with Blaise Ngolea in Manatee County today. Now we're going to take a quick break here on Fox 35 News Plus. If you're watching us on Fox Local and YouTube, we'll be right back at the top of the hour with more live news coverage.
Florida Live starts now.
Well, good afternoon to you and welcome into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us on this Thursday afternoon live on Fox Local, YouTube, and on Fox 35 TV. If you've been watching us on Fox Local and are continuing to stay with us here, we have been monitoring this news conference in Manatee County where the state CFO, Blaise Ngolia, has been breaking down his latest findings when it comes to the FAFO audits that he's been doing, looking at excessive and wasteful spending. Says he found $112 million in wasteful spending in the budget there. And he said that's one of the worst percentage-wise that they have found in the state. They've been going around. This is the 7th location that he's gone to and announced these findings. We'll hear more from him coming up in just a little bit, but I want to bring you some breaking news this afternoon. This was the scene just moments ago in Osceola County where a scrapyard is burning right now. Firefighters, fire crews on the scene trying to put out those flames. You can see that dense smoke just billowing into the air from this scrapyard. That's at South OBT and Old Tampa Highway. Big plume of smoke there. We're also hearing that it's causing some traffic issues in that area, so certainly something to be aware of. Now, the good news is Osceola County Fire Rescue tells us that there's no risk to any surrounding buildings or anything at this time, but they are closing 1792 South Orange Blossom Trail to traffic. So that is closed to traffic at Broad Street right now until further notice. And you can see it actually, some of those blockages there on the road, no traffic going along to keep cars out of that area. Again, these are images from Sky Fox just into our newsroom moments ago. We were bringing these to you live on Fox Local just a few minutes ago. So we will continue to monitor that situation and bring you any updates as they develop. We're also tracking more breaking news out of the Fox 35 Storm Center, where we now have some information from the National Hurricane Center tracking an area for potential development. This could be the future tropical storm or Hurricane Melissa. You see it's got a 20% chance of development over the next 7 days. This is in the Caribbean. Still a lot of questions about what that might mean, timing, track, all of those things. But we did want to bring you the breaking news that the National Hurricane Center now outlining that spot in the Caribbean for potential tropical development. We talked about that this morning with Fox 35 Storm Team meteorologist Brooks Garner. Noah Berggren will be in this afternoon on Fox 35 News, and we'll have more on that, more of what we need to know. So we are starting off this Thursday afternoon with a lot of breaking news, and now we're going to dive in depth a little bit as the investigation into Hope Florida and the Hope Florida Foundation entered a new phase this week, according to reporting from the Tampa Bay Times and Miami Herald. That's with the reporting that grand jury proceedings are underway this week at the Leon County Courthouse and looking into potential criminal wrongdoing when it comes to that Hope Florida case. So just a little bit ago, I had the chance to speak with Alexandra Glorioso, who is a state government reporter with the Miami Herald, and Lawrence Maurer, who's the Tallahassee correspondent for the Tampa Bay Times. They have been on top of this story since the very beginning and have actually been spending a lot of time at the courthouse this week seeing what they can learn about those grand jury proceedings. Here's what they told me about what they've found. I know the past couple of days y'all have been staking out the Leon County Courthouse. Nice to see you getting a little bit of a break from that. But just talk to us a little bit about what you have seen and who you have seen at the courthouse as the grand jury meets.
Well, we reported, I think it was last week now, that the grand jury was going to convene on this matter. And you know, at that point, it's still a little bit of a question mark. What are they meeting on? Because while the state prosecutor in Leon County has confirmed a criminal investigation, the office never confirmed the grand jury or what the subject of the investigation was. I mean, connecting the dots, it seemed as though it was related to the Hope Florida saga that we've been covering all year, and how $10 million walked from a Medicaid settlement to a state-created charity spearheaded by the First Lady and supported by Governor Ron DeSantis, and into a political committee intent on defeating the recreational marijuana amendment on last year's ballot. But you still as reporters, don't know for sure. So we decided to stake out the grand jury this week. We had come Monday to the courthouse to find that, nobody was there, which is what we thought based on our reporting. But then Tuesday, they really started with their proceedings. And the very first day, we saw Amy Ronshausen, who was the executive director of one of the nonprofits that applied for a $5 million grant to the foundation and then quickly turned around and donated close to the same amount of money to Keep Florida Clean, a political action committee helmed by, then Governor Ron DeSantis' Chief of Staff, James Uthmeier. So it's pretty interesting that Ronshausen was called in. She didn't answer our questions on what she was at the courthouse for, but we saw her go in on Tuesday morning around 9 o'clock and leave more than 2 hours later. She had an attorney. He, acknowledged that he was her attorney to us. So it seems as though she was likely there to testify on that financial transaction. And then you want to take it?
Sure. Yeah. We also saw Representative Alex Andrade. He, of course, is the Republican lawmaker who has been investigating this whole Hope Florida Foundation saga and the path of this $10 million in Medicaid money. He was there. He said he testified to the grand jury for about 2 hours. We also saw at the courthouse yesterday Joshua Hay, who until very recently was the president of the Hope Florida Foundation. And he was, of course, on the board that approved accepting the $10 million and giving away the $10 million. And so it's pretty clear that the grand jury seems to be looking at the path of this money, which is exactly what, Representative Alex Andrade has said was illegal.
You've also tried to speak with the state attorney about this. What have they said?
Really not much of anything. They won't even confirm that what the grand jury is looking at or what it's convening for. It was obvious that the state attorney Jack Campbell. It's obvious that he was there for the grand jury because we saw him going out of a room marked grand jury proceedings. He's obviously seems to be overseeing this process, but he won't say what this is really about. A couple months ago, his office did confirm, though, that they had an active criminal investigation going on related to the Hope Florida Foundation.
One of the difficulties I would imagine in your reporting on this story at this stage is that grand jury proceedings are, generally secret, and there isn't really much that comes out of things like this typically.
Yeah, we've really had to man every public exit of the courthouse, of which there are several, in fact. Two main ones, but then there are a few employee exits, and we could get close to one of them because it was a garage. So we had to do a lot of sleuthing to figure out how people were getting into the building and out of it. And many people were able to dodge us. We have ideas about who else testified, but we didn't actually physically see them. And so many people were able to dodge us, and, we basically caught people when they made a mistake and got, walked in front of us.
Yeah, and, the grand jury could result in two things. Obviously it could lead to an indictment of someone, or it could do, it could not indict someone. And, whatever's said at these proceedings, we don't know, and likely we'll never know. We'll just find out the result at some point, which could take weeks. Yeah.
Has the Attorney General answered any questions recently about this and where things kind of stand from his perspective?
No, he hasn't. In fact, everyone's been pretty quiet about it, including the Secretary for the Department of Children and Families, who was the person who was the secretary at the time. We saw her in an event yesterday and asked her, "Hey, did you get a grand jury subpoena?" She wouldn't even look at us. She literally ran away from us. And so everyone seems to be very, very hush-hush in the DeSantis administration about this at the moment.
And she's significant because it's the Department of Children and Families that was effectively overseeing the financial transactions of the Hope Florida Foundation, which is a state-created charity that was put into law to support the Department of Children and Families mission, which in this case was the Hope Florida program, which is intended to get Floridians off of government aid.
So do we know what a timeline might be for whatever might come from this grand jury proceedings?
No idea. I mean, it could take days, could take weeks. We really don't know. We've not been told what their schedule is or if they're going to come back. We don't know. So it could be any length of time. They could ask more witnesses to come. That's certainly within their purview. We just really don't know.
I'm curious, too, with the upcoming legislative session, if you're hearing any from state lawmakers about this, if this is going to be on their radar. We know there was a probe that started last session, but I'm curious if you're hearing anything from lawmakers about steps or guardrails when it comes to kind of legislative action about Hope Florida.
Well, last legislative session, they took action in the sense that they had no action because the governor had asked the legislature to enshrine the Hope Florida program into law. And after our reporting, lawmakers declined to do that. So I guess the governor could come up with a bill again. The governor doesn't sponsor the bill, but, he finds an ally in the legislature to sponsor the bill. I guess he could try to do that again, but his administration has been very quiet about the Hope Florida program. His agencies have not asked for new money to expand the program. And this was a program that he wanted to put into law, to have in place in the governor's office, and to have all related agencies answer directly to it. So it would have been like overseeing a lot of the healthcare programs and other programs in state government. They had big, expansive plans for the Hope Florida program, and that has largely gone quiet. It's not clear whether it's gone quiet just for now or if it's really gone quiet. But it's my understanding that the House is unlikely to keep probing Hope Florida this upcoming legislative session. That I think, everyone in the process is trying to respect now what is a criminal investigation and what the grand jury has going on. But there will be a question as to whether, say someone in the administration gets indicted, what will the legislature do? Because the legislature does have the power to impeach if an elected official is, found to have done a crime.
We'll be right back with more Florida Live after this. A live look at downtown Orlando on this Thursday afternoon. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Weimer, and thanks for joining us live on Fox Local, YouTube, and on Fox 35 TV. It is time now for our Tampa Connection, where we check in with our friends at Fox 13 Tampa Bay to see some of the biggest stories in the Bay Area today. Going to check in now with Nancy Gay, who's a senior content producer there. And Nancy, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Garrett. We're going to start today in Lakeland, where a Hooters bartender and manager has thrown her hat in the ring to become the city's next mayor. This has actually been one of our top stories since it was posted last night. Well, Caitlin Kramer is one of the youngest candidates to ever run for mayor of the city of Lakeland. She's 24 years old, and she says she wants to be a voice for the younger generation who may not be represented in politics or government. Now, Kramer, she was born and raised in Lakeland. She's a graduate of Bartow High School, and she's also an hourly manager and bartender at Hooters. She says the job has pushed her to become the best version of herself, and added that if she becomes the mayor, she wants to focus on better infrastructure, water quality, as well as affordable housing. The elections for mayor, as well as 2 commissioner seats in Lakeland, will be held on November 4th. Garrett?
All right, our second story today, and that is a former dog bar that catches fire.
Yeah, this actually happened last night around 7 o'clock at what used to be Pup's Pub that was over on Kennedy Avenue, and firefighters, they actually had to evacuate a nearby gas station and apartment complex out of abundance of caution. Now, as I mentioned, this used to be the former site of Pup's Pub. That dog bar actually closed in June. It did take legal action against the Florida Department of Health. Now, Pup's Pub, it originally opened in 2020 after the Florida Department of Health approved dog bars across the state. The bar's owner said back in June, though, that the business passed all health inspections during its first 2 years of operation, and they even opened a second location in Orlando in 2022. However, things took a turn for the worst when a newly promoted FDOH official unilaterally reversed the department's interpretation, deciding that operating an indoor-outdoor dog bar, which had been fully approved and compliant under the Department of Health jurisdiction for years, was suddenly prohibited. Now, Pup's Pub, they did take legal action against the Florida Department of Health, which said dogs are not allowed inside a business where anything consumable is served, even ice. The bar's owners argued that the state was misinterpreting its own food regulations. However, Pup's Pub, they did close in June. And again, Pup's Pub, the former site of it, did catch fire last night. It took firefighters about 30 minutes to put out that fire. Now, the new owner of the property told us that they were just about to seal the deal with a new tenant when that fire broke out last night. As of right now, the Tampa Fire Marshal's office, they are investigating to try to figure out what caused that fire, and fortunately, nobody was hurt. Garrett?
And looking at the site of that video and some of those photos, look like a pretty significant scene there.
Yeah, it was definitely a significant fire, and it's actually right down the street from our station here. And the new owner of the property, who said that it was about to be sold, he told us last night that this has become an area where a lot of homeless people tend to gather since Pup's Pub did close in June. He said a lot of homeless people gather there, and he believes the fire started when a homeless person got inside the building and was lighting a cigarette. However, the Tampa Fire Marshal is still investigating, so the cause of the fire is officially still under investigation, but that is what the new owner told us last night.
A lot of questions still to be answered in that case. We will keep an eye on that. And finally, an update to a story that we talked about yesterday with that charter school that was ordered to shut down, but apparently defying that order.
Yes, that's right. We went by that school earlier this morning, and there were parents dropping their children off. There were teachers going into the school. Now, the Hillsborough County School District did order Walton Academy for the Performing Arts to be shut down, citing safety and security concerns. Now, the district says the safety concerns were first flagged last spring, and officials say those issues have continued to mount since then, which prompted Tuesday's closure order. Now, attorneys representing Walton Academy says the district doesn't have the authority to immediately close the school. The charter school, which serves a small student population with a focus on performing arts, has faced scrutiny in the past over management, academic performance, as well as safety compliance. And according to a letter from the Florida Department of Education, the school failed to meet multiple safety requirements, including having a non-functioning emergency alert system, having insufficient emergency drills and staff training, as well as a lack of designated safe areas and classrooms for sheltering during emergencies. Officials also reported that the school's front gate was repeatedly left open during school hours, and it appeared open again during portions of the day on Wednesday when we did have a reporter out at the school. They said that they saw this gate open. Walton Academy's leadership, however, strongly disputes the district's claims. And in a statement to Fox 13, Emily Rodriguez, an attorney with the Arnold Law Firm, which is representing Walton Academy, stated, Walton Academy for the Performing Arts is deeply concerned by the actions of the Hillsborough County School Board and intends to pursue all available legal recourse. Florida law allows a charter school to remain open during the pendency of this type of appeal unless and until its sponsor obtains an injunction. All alleged safety violations of the school were cured before the school board's decision to terminate the school, and there is no danger to students. Accordingly, Walton Academy remains open at this time. Any attempt by the school board to close the school before a court order has been issued is inconsistent with Florida law. Now, as I mentioned, parents and grandparents dropping off students on Thursday said that they are relieved that the school is still open, and they are hopeful the situation can be resolved. Now, should the school district file an injunction as promised, Rodriguez says the school will challenge the district in court, and a judge could ultimately decide whether the school must close while the legal process continues or if it can remain open through the appeal. Garrett?
All right, so again, another story to watch closely there. Fox 13 senior content producer Nancy Gay, we appreciate you joining us for our Tampa Connection today.
Thank you.
Also in the Bay Area, State CFO Blazin Golia speaking in Manatee County just a little bit ago. He wrapped up his news conference. In fact, just a few minutes ago, did take some questions from reporters there after saying that he found about $112 million in what they believe to be wasteful and excessive spending. He says they've traveled to about a half dozen localities across the state for their FAFO audits, looking at wasteful spending in local governments, comparing it to what they believe a budget should be based on population and inflation adjustments, those kinds of things. And he said Manatee County is one of the worst percentage-wise that they have found. Here's a little bit of what he said.
We came up with the number of where the budget should have reasonably been if you accounted for all the inflation and population. That means we included extra money to add for fire and police, for law enforcement, for general government employees. We included the extra cost that they would have to spend on things because of inflation. We have accounted for the normal growth of government in our numbers. We've accounted for everything that a local government should or would need in order to deliver services to the taxpayers. And I'm sorry to say that Manatee County blew right past that number. Blew right past that number. Now, on a percentage basis, Manatee County is probably the worst that we've come across so far, and the amount of the percentage over and above inflation and population. I also want to highlight also that I am here in Manatee County, which is a deep red county. Republicans out-registered Democrats 2-1 in this county. I have said, and I will continue to say, that wasteful, excessive spending knows no partisan bounds. I, as the CFO of the great state of Florida, I'm going to call out wasteful spending, whether it is a Republican county or a Democrat county, because that is the only way you guys are going to know if I am being truthful with you. And I'm going to tell you right now, the big government apologists who are out there hitting the airwaves and writing the editorials, they are not being truthful with you. In fact, their rhetoric is saying that we're only doing this exercise in blue counties. That is absolutely not true. We've already done Hillsborough County. Hillsborough County is a red county, and they have more Republicans on their county commission than Democrats. We did Seminole County, same thing, and now we're in deep red Manatee County. So we've crunched the numbers. Once we took the budget, brought it forward, indexed for inflation and population to find out what Manatee County's general fund budget should be reasonably at this time. They blew past that number by $112 million. Manatee County.
That's CFO Blaise Ngolia speaking just moments ago in Manatee County, talking about what they believe the wasteful and excessive spending there has been. He's been across the state. He mentioned it there. Orange County, City of Jacksonville, Hillsborough, Alachua, Broward, and Seminole counties. As well as he continues this tour and this push. As we go to break here on Florida Live, let me give you a live look at the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. It is day 16 of the federal government shutdown. A Senate vote today failed to advance the continuing resolution, so we remain in deadlock and a stalemate right now on Capitol Hill. Keep it right here. More Florida Live after this. Another live look right now at downtown Orlando on this Thursday afternoon. Welcome back into Florida Live. Garrett Weimer here, and thanks for joining us live on Fox Local, YouTube, and on Fox 35 TV. The Orange and Osceola County State Attorney sent a scathing letter to Attorney General James Uthmeier, escalating the war of words and battle between the state attorney and the state attorney general. In that letter, Monique Worrell accused James Uthmeier of, quote, undermining prosecutorial independence, distorting the truth, and weaponizing misinformation to justify political retaliation. This is a way that the state attorney, Monique Worrell, is rebutting some of the claims that the attorney general has made in a recent week on social media and at news conferences as well, calling out her office on a number of specific cases, previously talking about an issue with the backlogs and not liking that her policies about some cases. Obviously, this comes a couple of years after she was removed from her office by Governor Ron DeSantis. He was reelected to that role last fall, but some believe this may be setting the stage for another potential suspension and removal from office. And so I talked about this head-to-head battle with Aubrey Jewett, a UCF political science professor. He joined me this morning on Fox 35 News Plus to break down what we're seeing, put it in context for us, and also talk about what might happen next.
Well, I think it is Monique Worrell's attempt to be much more proactive. And instead of just sort of sitting back and taking the political hits and the accusations, she's trying to get out in front of this, at least to some degree, and make the case that these are political attacks or unfounded attacks, and that she doesn't deserve them, and that it not only perhaps is trying to set the stage to once again suspend her or have the governor suspend her, but also that it hurts the Florida community and hurts the ability of her to do her job, and then reduces confidence in the justice system as well. So I think broadly, though, she's just trying to be more proactive and get out in front of this and lay out some of the specific things that she thinks is happening, rather than just being on the receiving end of attacks from the governor, and particularly the state attorney general, Uthmeier.
Because we have seen quite a bit of that. The attorney general, really kind of being a bulldog in this and going on the attack a lot in several ways, recently pointing out several different specific cases that they believe her office is handling wrongly. And in that the letter, I thought it was interesting to see Monique Worrell say, essentially, I know what you're up to here, and this is some of the language you're using is some of what we heard in the lead up to her initial suspension from office back in 2023.
Yeah, indeed. I thought it was interesting, some of the very specific things that she went into on some of these charges that the Attorney General had made, and basically defending herself and her office and her employees for the decisions that they had made. And from her perspective, they're following the law. So, I do think that was interesting, that she was trying to say, look, you don't really know, and you didn't talk about the details and the applicable law here. That's what we're trying to follow. And then, to your second point, broadly, this definitely has some echoes of what happened during her first term, when the governor did suspend her, and also another state's attorney from over in Hillsborough, Andrew Warren. And of course, at that time, they were accused, the governor was accused by critics, including both those state attorneys, of doing that for political reasons, not for reasons that were found under the Constitution, like misfeasance, malfeasance, drunkenness, and not performing your duties, these kinds of things. And so, the echoes of that move forward now. I mean, in the Tampa case, the governor eventually got what he wanted because Andrew Warren was not reelected. But here, the people of Orange and Osceola, the voters, they did pick Monique Worrell to serve again, despite the governor removing her the first time. And so there's sort of been a shadow over her this entire time since she's been reelected, that will the governor try to suspend her again? And so I know this letter reflects that, right? I mean, she is well aware that that's a possibility again.
You certainly don't expect an attorney general and all of the state attorneys to always see eye to eye on everything. There are certainly different philosophies about some things, but at the same time, this is interesting to see because essentially they're on the same team, representing the state of Florida when it comes to prosecutions. Is this unusual to kind of see this from an attorney general taking this tack?
Certainly unusual. From my perspective, I moved to Florida almost 40 years ago, back in 1986, as a young person, and got residency after a year, and then started, going to college and university. So my 40 years here and my 30 years studying Florida politics and teaching about it, I don't ever remember such sort of an ugly back and forth that has, and not just one or two things, but has gone on and on between the state attorney and a particular between the attorney general and any particular state attorney. So it's definitely different than anything I can remember historically. Not that an attorney general and a state attorney never disagreed on anything, but it's just the almost constant attacks and constant, attempts to undermine her and set the stage that politically the governor would have reasons to remove her again. Well, and in fact, the removal of the two state attorneys last time, in the previous term, both Monique Worrell and Andrew Warren, that was unheard of for the reasons that the governor gave, right? I mean, we've sometimes had a state attorney maybe be removed because they were indicted for a crime, or something fairly significant. But we never had one, let alone two, removed in the same term for what seemed to be largely policy disputes about how to do the job.
The letter from Monique Worrell points out, she says, I am independently elected. You mentioned how she was reelected to this position after previously being removed from office. She also talks about the Attorney General not holding supervisory authority over the state attorney. So why do you think we are seeing Attorney General Uthmeier wade into this battle and be so upfront and vocal about this issue?
Well, it's always difficult to know what people's true motivations are, and particularly for politicians. I always tell my students, sometimes it's difficult to know what their true motivations are. But from the way I see it, and I think what a lot of political observers see, they would say there's probably two primary motivations. Some is a genuine concern about the approach that a more progressive state attorney would take in doing their job, right? Uthmeier is a conservative, very traditionalist, as is Governor DeSantis. And so, I do think that is part of it. It's just a sincere belief that there is a better way to do this. And it's like taking a harder line and more conservative line on all these issues. But the second motivation almost certainly is political. Attorney General Uthmeier has almost certainly been attacking her over and over again publicly to try to lay out a public record that the governor could use to suspend her, and also maybe to try to influence public opinion so that if the governor did suspend her, maybe this time there wouldn't be quite such the backlash that there was last time.
Yeah, what politically, how do you see this playing out politically, from that perspective?
Well, yeah, your guess is as good as mine, right? I mean, on the one hand, if you'd asked me before 4 or 5 years ago whether a state attorney would be suspended by the governor for these kinds of reasons, I would have said, well, no, I'm not aware of it ever happening before, so I don't think it would happen this time, right? Because they are locally elected. And and particularly in this case, not only was she locally elected, but after the governor removed her, the local community voted for her again and said, and basically doubled down and said, this is the person that we want to be our state attorney. But having said all that, Governor DeSantis has been very aggressive, and he has broken, I won't say the law, but he's certainly broken some of the norms of Florida politics, sort of the long-standing expectations of how things run in the state. And so he's not been shy about breaking the norms and sort of pushing the envelope of the law. And so bottom line is, if this was like sports book, I'd say 50-50 that she remains in office for her full term, but also 50-50 that she might get removed once again by Governor DeSantis.
And you mentioned some of the backlash before. Has this issue changed politically and the perception of it now that we have such a big focus on crime and soft on crime policies across the country that the president loves to highlight, that we hear? This is just such a big topic of conversation. If the governor were to remove Monique Worrell a second time here, do you think we would see a backlash, or do you think that perceptions of this issue have changed to where we might not?
No, I still think you'd see a backlash, and it, of course, depends on who it's coming from, right? I mean, in some ways, it's going to be pretty standard partisan political polarization. Republicans, Trump supporters, the MAGA movement, Governor DeSantis supporters, etc., will almost certainly, if he removes her, say that it was for cause and it was for a good reason, that she's not doing her job and that we need to crack down on crime and get tougher. But certainly almost all Democrats and progressives are going to say just the opposite, that this is totally political, that this is a locally elected office, and this would be the second time that Governor DeSantis has defied the will of the voters. And once again, he's not letting the local people and local democracy work. Instead, they would accuse him of being an authoritarian and removing her for political disagreements. So I don't know that if he does remove her, I don't expect it will be quiet. I don't expect most people will just accept it. There will be some harsh arguments about it afterwards.
We'll be right back with more Florida Live after this. A live look at Daytona Beach right now from our Hard Rock Hotel camera. Biketoberfest getting underway this weekend. Going to be a beautiful weekend for that. Welcome back into Florida Live. Garrett Weimer here, and thanks for joining us on this Thursday afternoon, live on Fox Local, YouTube, and on Fox 35 TV. And I'm just looking here because just into our newsroom, we have a memo now from the Speaker of the Florida House sent out to members of the State House of Representatives, and it's basically letting them know about several House joint resolutions that were filed today about property taxes. So these are resolutions that, if the legislature approves in this upcoming session, would put this issue on the ballot for voters to consider, a constitutional amendment for several different aspects of property taxes. I'm looking at the ones that were filed here. One of them completely eliminates non-school homestead property taxes. Another one phases it out over a 10-year period. Another one exempts Florida residents over the age of 65 from paying those non-school homestead property taxes. So obviously this has been an ongoing issue and conversation, and I just expect that to ramp up when the legislature gets back into session. These are all proposals that came out of the House Select Committee that met earlier in the year to look at this issue. They heard a lot of presentations, took in a lot of data, spoke to some stakeholders as well, and formulated these proposals. A couple of takeaways from them, regardless of which one you're looking at. None of them reduces, well, all of them, I should say, prohibit governments, local governments, from reducing funding for law enforcement And the other thing is they all exempt school taxes. So when we're talking about phasing out these property, or eliminating these property taxes, it would not apply to the school property taxes. So much more to come on this. Just looking at this right now, reading this memo from the House Speaker to the members of the Florida House of Representatives. So we'll have more coverage of this coming up later on Fox 35 News and tomorrow as well on Fox Local. Well, shifting gears a little bit, and want to give you a warning about a scam, something to watch out for. The BBB warning folks about a Facebook marketplace scam. It can be a great place to buy things, to find some certain goods, but there's a word of warning, especially when it comes to buying big ticket items. And Holly Sammons, who's the president and CEO of the BBB serving Central Florida, stopped by our streaming studio earlier today and talked with me about what folks need to watch for. Holly, Facebook Marketplace can be a great tool, but there are some things that folks really need to watch out for, and I think that's something we're seeing more and more now.
Yeah, it can be a really convenient way to, find what you're looking for, or, get a great deal. But also we know that scammers are now taking advantage of folks, and especially kind of the troubling trend is that, we're seeing larger and larger ticket items, especially vehicles, boats, and now even farm equipment. And this stuff is tens of thousands of dollars, so these are huge losses for consumers. So
what are some things that people need to watch out for? Because now that, we're not just talking about entertainment centers and, TVs anymore. Right. Those are big investments. Sure. That people really have to be careful about.
Yeah, that's right. And, if you're looking for a couch, if you're looking for, a pair of shoes, those are things that you expect to be able to go to someone's home or meet them in the community and take a look at and purchase and pick up and take it home. But as far as a vehicle or a boat or a piece of large farm equipment, a lot of people are finding these what looks to be an opportunity, and it's a really great deal. Maybe the person is in another state, but they're willing to bring it down, or they're willing to ship it down. Facebook Marketplace tends to be, right now, what we're seeing is that this is how they're finding their victims, and they're not local. They make it appear that they're just close enough, but you need to go ahead and take advantage of this now. Send us a deposit, or go ahead and wire us the money, or, through a payment app, send us the money, and, we'll get this to you. We'll arrange for transport, but the vehicle never comes. And this is a lot of money at stake.
Is there a safe way to make a big purchase like that on Facebook Marketplace, or do you kind of recommend against that for these big ticket items?
Yeah, I think, I don't want to speak for law enforcement, but when it comes to, walking around and meeting strangers with thousands of dollars, safety is obviously also a concern, no matter what the item is, no matter if it's a vehicle or, a diamond ring or whatever. So make sure you take into consideration your own safety. But also, if you're considering making a purchase like a boat or a vehicle, farm equipment, something big like this, just consider, how much money do I have to spend? Do I have that money to risk? And if I lose that money, do I have, can I replace it? Am I going to be out the money I need to buy another car? It's a lot of money to risk. So if you're thinking about buying a really big ticket item, and let's say it's, a few hours drive away, or maybe even it would require a plane ticket, in the end, you may be better off going and laying your eyes on it and then completing the purchase, rather than taking a leap of faith and finding out that it was all for nothing. So, even if they send you pictures, even if they send you VIN number information, just remember that stuff is all really easily, falsified. So laying your eyes on it, meeting this person face to face, or at least dealing with a business that you can verify that their legitimacy, you can verify, are they licensed to sell me this vehicle, stuff like that. It's just so hard to, fact check this transaction from afar. So, a good opportunity might be to go see it for yourself. And if it's too far, but it's not an amount of money that you can afford to risk, maybe don't do it.
I'm glad you bring up some of those, kind of documentation items, because when you're talking about things like that, there are very specific things that need to be done.
Yeah.
And you're also talking about something that someone could be selling you something that they don't even own.
For sure, that they don't even have their hands on. They may not even be in the States. If you think about how many people you could reach with this scam sitting behind a computer, you could be selling allegedly this same piece of farm equipment to hundreds of people or thousands of people all across the country, and the piece of equipment doesn't exist. So just because they're texting you, just because they're sending you pictures, if they're trying to rush you, if they're saying, you know what, I have a list of other buyers that want to buy this. I don't have time for you to come out here and look at this. I don't have time for you to ask all these questions. Consider that a red flag. If you have questions and they don't have answers, if you want access, if you want to meet them, if you want to see the vehicle for yourself, and they won't allow that, those should be red flags that you don't ignore.
And the other thing is, Holly, is that unlike doing business with a place of business where you could look them up, you can do some research into them, you can check their BBB rating.
Right.
That's hard to do with something like Facebook Marketplace, so you don't even necessarily know who you're dealing with.
Yeah, and even buying a car from an individual, many of us have at some point in our life maybe bought a car from an individual, just a consumer-to-consumer transaction. But even in a very legitimate, person-to-person, purchasing a car, there are things you have to do it correctly. There are titles, and you have to make sure that you're handling this correctly with, registration and insurance and things like that. So, if you're an uneducated buyer, and there's no shame in that. Most of us are not car dealers. We're not dealing in farm equipment regularly. You have to make sure that you can trust the person that you're dealing with, or that you yourself have done enough homework and enough research that you feel good about how I'm handling this, how this transaction's going down, am I protecting myself? Is this vehicle, is it legitimate? Am I going to be able to lay my hands on it? Was it stolen? Is it real? There's so many questions. And so if you're going into it with someone that you don't know that you can trust, you have to protect yourself, and that starts with asking a lot of questions.
And you mentioned the person-to-person kind of vehicle sales. A lot of times that starts with seeing the vehicle to begin with, driving by it, seeing it, knowing it's there or something like that, checking it out, so you at least know that it exists. When you have that kind of virtual where you're relying on a picture on Facebook Marketplace, who knows?
Right.
And so what's just, generally when we're talking about something like Facebook Marketplace, what's your word of advice, kind of your bottom line for people when considering a purchase like this?
I think if you're buying a couch or if you're buying a low ticket item, I think it's a pretty low risk transaction. But when you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars or any amount of money that you can't afford to lose, you have to, no pun intended, put yourself in the driver's seat, ask a lot of questions, and insist on doing things the smart way. And that starts with, how can I lay eyes on this vehicle? How can I, have it checked out by a mechanic, things like that. And if you're not allowed that access, then it's a pass.
A lot of good food for thought in that interview there. We're going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back after this. A live look right now at Kia Center in downtown Orlando on this Thursday afternoon. Could be busy tonight for the final preseason game of the year. The Orlando Magic hosting the New Orleans Pelicans ahead of the season opener next week. So preseason winding down, and we heard from head coach Jamal Mosley just a little bit ago after shoot-around.
Coach, what was the focus of shoot-around today? How much is targeted towards the game tonight, and then how much is targeted just towards advancing the group?
Yeah, I think a big portion of it was more towards what we do, continuing to hit it home on our key points, the way we want to run, how we want to keep focus on our defensive, our tenacity, our energy, all those things that we're going to talk about, and they apply to tonight just as well.
How did Jalen respond to his activity from the other day in a pretty physical practice, apparently?
Jalen responded well. I think he responded well. You see he's getting some shots up now. He was able to do some 5-on-0 today, so he's slowly responding, which is a good sign.
Do you expect him to be available tonight?
No.
What do you want to get out of tonight's game, the last game before the regular season? Is it a dress rehearsal, or what's your approach?
I think it's still a combination of both, like Dan just spoke about. I really do believe it's focusing on what we do, our offensive staples, our defensive staples, and then some rotation pieces, seeing what guys can still play with other guys, looking at different combinations. I think that's going to be something we'll continue to look at tonight, as well as we have a couple more scrimmages in practice down the stretch.
I was going to ask, if Jalen can't go tonight, presumably, like you said, is there a scenario where he could be ready for opening day? Like, is there enough time for him to do the work that he needs to do, regardless of how he responds to whatever that work may be? We know that once season starts, practice time is limited.
Yeah. Now, you'd love to say there is enough time, and in the same breath, you have to say, are we going to be smart about how we're approaching it? And so we'll see what he does, how he responds to what was done yesterday, which was good. We'll have a couple more scrimmages where we'll be able to go live, some 3-on-3, some 5-on-5, and we'll see how he responds after each one of those days. And then we'll be able to tell you accordingly on game night. You'll know what it is or isn't on opening night.
Head coach Jamal Mosley speaking to reporters earlier today after shoot-around. Again, the final preseason game of the year tonight at 7 o'clock at Kia Center. It's the Magic and the Pelicans, and then they tip off the regular season next week. That's the 22nd. I think that's Wednesday, if I'm not wrong. It's the Miami Heat they'll be hosting for that season opener at Kia Center. So it is just about here. They have made a lot of additions in the offseason, hoping for a deep playoff push this year, and that all begins starting next week. So a lot of excitement for that. Well, thanks for joining us on this busy Thursday afternoon here on Florida Live. Hope you join us next time for more, and join us throughout the day as well on Fox Local. We are out of time here, but let me give you another live look at the Kia Center in downtown Orlando. Have a good one.
Hello everybody, meteorologist Noah Bergen here. It's just after 3 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. It is now the 16th of October, 2025, and we've got a lot to talk about today, including trouble in the tropics. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here over the next couple of days. So without further ado, I just want to get you right to the point. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Fox Local. Hello, everybody. I want to get you right to what the concern is for today. And what the concern is for today is this. And this is the tropical weather outlook for the next 7 days. So what we're looking at here is a tropical wave in the eastern Atlantic, over here by the X, that's going to track west in the next several days and enter the Caribbean as we head into next week. Now, a lot to be decided with this. For now, we have a 20% chance of development in the next 7 days. I expect this to grow as we get closer, but again, been talking about this now for days. It looks like we're going to have some tropical mischief in the Caribbean late month. So that's our newest area. Remember, these outlooks go out for the next 7 days. But what I want to show you here is some of the guidance in some of the models. So let me take you over here into the European model. So here's the Euro today, and what we're talking about here is development of this tropical wave, which is right here. Notice on the Eastern Caribbean. Here it is. This is Monday of next week. So showers and storms enter the Caribbean. Then maybe by Wednesday of next week, we start to see low pressure or depression form. Here's Wednesday into Thursday. Then by a week from now, we're probably talking about tropical storm Melissa or Nestor, if something else formed in the Atlantic, in the Caribbean. And then here, notice the Euro pushes it into the Gulf of Honduras, or the area there off of Honduras, stops it, develops, and then it sits there and spins, develops into a major hurricane, and then this is as far out as the model goes. Is it's kind of lifting to the north and northwest, heading into Halloween. So again, this is a pretty major hurricane. There's no two ways about that. There on the chart, we're talking about verbatim there. You see that's probably a Cat 3 hurricane the Euro is showing. So there it is that forms. Now look. I'm not normally a fan of showing raw models, but I'm going to in this case because I think this is the best way to show the uncertainties at play here. And what I want you to take away from this is, let me zoom this out. I want you to look at the hemispheric pattern that the Euro is depicting. And why the heck am I showing you this? Well, a couple of things. Let me take this off screen and we'll pull up something that I can draw on this with. So this is going to be a real challenge in determining where this probable tropical development ends up. And it's going to be a while until we know where this thing goes. We definitely cannot rule out anything right now, but it's going to be interesting. So let me bring this image in, and let's do some looking here. So first of all, this is the jet stream pattern before Halloween, and what I want you to take away from this here is several things. First, we have a lot of uncertainty with how the jet stream pattern is going to look. Now, this is today's European model, and a couple of things. First, we've got big trough here in the western U.S. Late month. So aside from the hurricane down here, one thing that looks likely is that late month there's going to be a big trough and a big ridge. We call this with the P&A phase. We call this a negative phase of the P&A, where it's the Pacific North American Index, where it's very cold, big shot of cool air out west, big ridge of warmth into New England and Canada. Now, I don't know what the heck this thing is that's over the Tennessee Valley. That's probably model artifact. But here's why this thing is I don't want to use the word concern yet, but very, very challenging and already looking like it's going to be a headache forecasting wise, is that this is a huge dome up here. And I mean like, wow, dome of high pressure over eastern Canada. 9 times out of 10, when there's a big dome of high pressure there, you see tropical threats to the southeast U.S. We covered this in our hurricane special. I interviewed the deputy director of the Hurricane Center, and Andy Hazelton is a hurricane researcher. Long story short, the point is when we see big high pressure in the eastern part of Canada that strong, generally it means storms get forced this way if they're down there. Now, the interesting thing here is in this model is that there's a trough here, there's a little trough here, and then you've got potential Hurricane Melissa here. Now, if you just follow how these things are going, that's the pattern, but you've also got this opposing flow up here from that ridge. And the interesting thing here is if this cutoff low was not here, this little separate area of spin right here, not there, this thing probably would sit down here for a long time. With such a strong dome of high pressure up over New England, there's not really a route that this can escape like this with this high up here. The only reason why it tries to in this model run is because there's a teeny little cutoff low that skirts. Tropical system in the Caribbean that forms with such a big ridge over New England, there's going to be a lot of erraticness and uncertainty with, does it sit down there, does it get picked up? Notice there's a little hint of a trough here over the Tennessee Valley, but the timing of that is going to be crucial because if it's too slow, this thing could enter the Gulf and be a Florida threat. If it's fast enough, it might miss picking up the hurricane, hypothetically. It just sits down there for days and days and days and days and waits for something to get it. Or if the timing is right, it could push this east of Florida and cross it through the Bahamas before Halloween. But it's, yeah, see, the interesting thing is all of the models show a very strong ridge over eastern Canada about the time. This is the Euro AI ensemble. Here's the GFS ensemble. Not quite as strong with the Canadian high. Here's the Canadian ensemble, which interestingly enough, very strong signal for a ridge in eastern Canada. That can make things really complicated for hurricane forecasting, is because that kind of blockades the escape routes for tropical systems. Now, the hope would be a cold front comes through and pushes it away, but you would have to time it perfect for that. Let me show you some of the ensemble members today. So if you're just joining us, hello on Facebook, YouTube, Fox Local. We're talking about this. This is the topic of discussion for the day, is the growing chances of tropical formation in the Caribbean next week, which now it's officially at 20, but I would expect this probability to go up starting over the next few days. And the million-dollar questions are going to be, where does potential system go, and who does it impact? It would appear more likely than not that something should form. What intensity, where it tracks, those are things that we have no idea on yet. And there's nothing to be worked up about in Florida or anywhere else. The point is, if you're here in Florida, if you're anywhere in the state of Florida, should be following the forecast. But that's it. Just take it day by day. We'll watch. We'll see what happens. We'll watch the trends. But if you're in Florida, have a vacation to the Bahamas, a cruise to the Caribbean, a Cancun or Cozumel vacation, or a cruise to Mexico, very common time of the year for Florida cruisers. If you have a vacation or a cruise plan to the Bahamas or the Caribbean before the end of the month, you'll 1,000% want to keep tabs on this, because obviously a major hurricane could change or alter or cancel your trip. So this, even if it misses Florida, is going to have an impact in all likelihood on somebody somewhere. Now, what I want to show you is the ensembles. So what this is we take the models and tweak them and run them a bunch of different times to account for error. And I want you to notice this is the AI Euro ensembles that just came in. Now notice there's a camp of scenarios where this scoots east of Florida really quickly at the end of next week. That's possible. Now I want to pull up something I drew last night. I didn't post it yet because I wanted to wait until today to see how the data looked, but actually it turned out I probably don't need to change it at all. So these are the scenario. Oh, this is as of last night. I got to change these model numbers here. So let me turn these off quick. We don't confuse anybody here. So here's kind of the scenarios for this. The way it looks right now. Let me see if I can get this pulled up there. So scenario A would be that this potential system stays pretty weak, just goes into Central America and kaput, that's it. Could be a threat for them with rain, but that's it. Scenario B is this one that would be of a concern for Florida, where it's slower developing, a trough doesn't pick it up, and it's able to get west of Jamaica. If this thing gets west of Jamaica as a hurricane, it could be an issue for us. The hope for Florida and the southeast U.S. would be that it forms either kind of quick or a cold front comes in faster than it looks in some of the data, and this thing gets lifted north between Cuba and Haiti, and then gets pushed east, well east of Florida. Still could produce surge and impacts on the coast, but it's not a threat to Florida or the southeast directly. So, and I know this seems like we're covering all the bases, but it's a long range out. Nothing's formed yet, but it's just to simply put it in a graphic. That's probably the three scenarios that realistically exist, of which the one that would be a concern for us is B. But for B to happen, it has to be slow forming, and it's got to get west of Jamaica first. That's pretty clear. For A to happen, the models just have to be wrong, and it stays really weak, which I guess could happen, but there's a decreasing amount of models suggesting A. C, the scenario for that, the argument for that is that a cold front comes in about a week to 10 days from now, and the cold front is really strong and makes it past Florida, scoops this up and kicks it out, and it's, hey, see you later, goodbye. But you'll see that here on the ensemble members. Let me bring this back. So notice these models out over here. Let me make this full screen. Take this full screen. So notice these models over here. See how there's a couple of these lows here in the Bahamas, east of Florida over here? There's about 4 members, 4 out of 50 that say the escape route C could happen. 4 out of 50 is not a high number, but it's it's non-zero. Now, there are members you see here that keep it kind of weak, going to Nicaragua or Honduras. You see them right there. This is the end of next week. But probably the majority of the models just sit this down here for a while. And hypothetically, if it sits down there, it's going to strengthen. I mean, the waters is like bathtub jacuzzi water. It hasn't been touched all year. then hypothetically becomes a big system. Now, the question then would be, when does a trough come by to pick it up? Because almost all October hurricanes in the Western Caribbean end up going north at some point, 95% of them. So the question would then be, when does it get lifted north? And notice there's a huge, I mean, we're still talking about this into Halloween. There's some of these models that are just sitting down there waiting for it to get picked up. And notice some skirted east, some bring it into Florida. Yeah, who would know there? Here's the Euro ensemble. Notice there's one member that's really fast out to sea out here in the right, stage right. You see that there at scenario C. And then there's several models that go into Central America. But on the Euro, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably 8. 8 out of 50. What is that? 16% of the, yeah, well, sorry, I wasn't thinking. 16% of the models say it could be a Florida landfall. Is that a lot? No. It's a long-range forecast. What do you want it to be, 80%? You know, there's never going to be that confidence this far out. But you see some bring it into Florida as a big system. Some skirted east. But again, we're going to be talking about this thing for a while. I think the GFS actually pretty well represents. Freaky little small low that gets trapped under this ridge that should happen. This is just going to sit down there, and it's probably going to be God knows when until it moves, because there's a really strong signal that there's going to be a big ridge in eastern Canada. There's the Euro. Canadian, I just don't know what it's doing. There's the regular Euro, which you see big ridge in eastern Canada, but you know, the model doesn't even go out further than that. Hypothetically, this could end up in the Carolinas at that rate. It could merge with this low. I have no idea. Yeah, so anyway, the point is we have no idea where this is going to go yet. It's a week from even forming, but it's going to be definitely something we need to monitor here over the next week. Hello, everybody. Thank you for watching. So there's the storm names today. Melissa's next, followed by Nestor, and then Olga. Let me look at some of your comments. Pull them up here. Big Block HP. I'm Cat 6. There's no Cat 6. Hello from Titusville. Harry Vanderkamp. Hello from Holbrook, Mass. Elaine, how are you? How are you? What did he say? Is it bad? Isaac. When will we get a good idea of where it's going to head, Nicole? Once it forms, we should start to have a better idea of where it goes, but that's not going to happen for a week. So for the next week, this is just, close your eyes and throw a dart at a dartboard at the bar and hope you hit the bullseye. Other than that, there's no idea. What are our water temps looking like in Gulf and Atlantic? Conditions favorable? The Caribbean, yes, are very favorable there. If you look on Windy, this looks nasty. Brat 16R. Not to bash another company or anything, but I believe the Windy app, they're just taking the raw GFS model. So there's nothing really. Just so you know, we always get asked this, and I get asked this all the time. That Windy app is literally just taking the GFS or the Euro model and just showing it to you. There's nothing else, and that's going to change every 6 to 8 hours. So I would not put a lot of stock in that quite yet. What's up, Isaac Hernandez? How are you? The Sword says hello on YouTube. Hey, Noah, show me the Google DeepMind AI model. Sadly, I cannot show you that here. Hello from Jamaica, Ricardo. If you're in Jamaica, Ricardo, I would definitely be watching this tropical potential close. Based on what I have seen, Jamaica will be impacted. I would not say will yet. I would say could be impacted, Ricardo. Again, we're talking about something that hasn't even formed yet, so there's still a way to go, Ricardo, in that regard. All right, so we talked about the tropics enough. We beat that horse already here. We've covered those bases, so let's talk about what's going on outside. It's a nice day out. Temperatures in Florida are pretty good. Humidity's low. Temperatures are in the mid-80s out there, 85 in Orlando, 83 in Melbourne, 86 in TPA. 83 MIA, which would be Miami International. No rain, interestingly, out there today. Still could be a few sprinkles on the Space Coast, but probably not a lot. By the way, the rainy season is over. It concluded yesterday, which is when our majority of daily showers and storms happens. And the rain totals from this rainy season, May 15th through the middle of October, ended up most significant in Melbourne and Daytona Beach at about 40 inches of rain. And for context, here's the rain in Orlando. We had 36.63 inches of rain this rainy season. The average is 33, so about 4 inches or so above what's normal. The most amount of rain ever during the rainy season was 49 and change, and that was back in 1905. So temperatures tonight, how about this? 60s for most, a couple of 70s on the beaches with a few more clouds there. Tomorrow, highest readings inland, maybe only staying in the 70s, Daytona and New Smyrna. But the good news here, outdoor plans, I got Biketoberfest. The rain chances are a goose egg Friday into the weekend. So that is some good news there. That's going to do it for me here on this stream. I've got to go get ready for the news at 5, and I've got a few other things to do. We'll talk to you much more about this growing tropical potential in the Caribbean. But definitely going to be something that we hear a lot more about in the next week or so. So there's the tropical wave. There's the zone we're going to have to watch. Again, it's a long way out there, but it definitely looks like there's the potential for Melissa to form as we head into next week. So you guys have a great rest of your day. I appreciate you watching us on Fox Local, YouTube, and Facebook. We'll be covering this extensively with the Fox 35 Storm Team over the next, gosh knows, 2 weeks of whatever this decides to do, whether it's a hero problem or not. We'll let you know where it's going and what to do, but for now, we'll just enjoy the nice weather because it is Florida after all. It is beautiful out there. So have a good rest of your night. I'll see you at 5, 6, 8, 10, and 11. We'll talk more about the tropics. Have a good night.
updated. We'll get back to that in just a moment. Do want to get back to the tropics, though. Fox Weather is your Hurricane HQ, and as we approach the final month of the 2025 season, that'll be November, we still have some activity, a new area to watch that's making its way toward the Caribbean. That was the camera we saw earlier. Beverages, sunshine, warmth. It's good to be in St. Lucia right now. You could see that. Overall, I guess looking toward the Virgin Islands, they're right in between. It's an old front, a decaying one out this way, and some thunderstorm activity off to the south and east. So right in between the two, you're in really good shape. This is what we're watching. We've been watching it since it emerged off the west coast of Africa as a tropical wave. That was a few days back. That was already interesting because typically at this point in the season, we don't see a whole lot of that. And that's not to say that this is for sure something of consequence. But the signals have been there for a few days now, and the National Hurricane Center this afternoon, with their 2 p.m. Outlook across the Atlantic, did include that area of disturbed weather. Nothing imminent. You notice the disturbance is here. The possible development zone is thousands of miles off to the west there, at least a couple thousand. So there's a ways to go here. It'll be end of the weekend, the early part of next week, that those storms are moving across the islands, likely the Windward Islands in through here as a moisture surge, could have some gusty storms. But most of the forecast models have had at least a little something, the potential in the Caribbean moving through the middle and latter part of next week. And at that time scale, and I've been saying this, all we can talk about is trends and potential. That's all this is. But because it is